published 1730 Est, the 27th of November 2017, updated 0317 Est, the 28th of November 2017. They are a proud lot, George Graham's boys, but even so, the turnout for the premiere of '89, the film about the magnificent last-minute title win at Anfield, must have hurt just a little. Only one member of the current squad, Jack Wilshere, bothered to make it. I feel it's something they would benefit from together, mused Paul Davis, if only to capture what we had back then. The showing was on Wednesday, November 8th, in the middle of the last international break. A number of Arsenal players had obvious commitments for the country. Laurent, Koscielny and Alexandre. Lacazette were with France, Mesut Ozil with Germany, Granit Xhaka with Switzerland, but Arsenal do not have as many current internationals as one might think. Only Jack Wilshere, of Arsenal's current squad, bothered to attend the '89 film premiere. None of the Spanish players were called up, for instance, and none of their English. 3 of the Frenchmen were at home and 2 of the 3 Germans. Aaron Ramsey was picked by Wales but withdrew injured. Chile and Bosnia-Herzegovina did not have games, and Petr Cech retired from international football in 2016. It's quite a team the current Arsenal could have fielded that night. Actually, Cech, Mathieu Debuchy, Alexis Sanchez, Ramsey, Olivier Giroud, David Ospina, Theo Walcott, Rob Holding, Nacho Monreal, Santi Cazorla, Shkodran Mustafi, Callum Chambers, Danny Welbeck, Hector Bellerin, Sead Kolasinac, Francis Coquelin. Even the manager, Arsene Wenger. Yet only Wilshere, a player who appears to mean less and less to a club he clearly loves, was motivated too. It is not as if those who skipped it have too many title winners' medals to the name either, certainly not in this country. As Davis pointed out in Sportsmail's The Verdict, just because an event happened before the Premier League era, it does not make it irrelevant. Yet would a similar occasion at another Premier League club be very different? Most of Arsenal's players would have been available to attend, but only Wilshere showed up. Graham Souness said recently that he doubted whether many of today's players even knew of his career, and he didn't exempt those at Liverpool from that. Increasingly, the team, even managers and coaching staff, are passing through. What a club represents, its past, its famous names, means little to them. When Bill Nicholson died on Saturday, October 23, 2004, Jacques Santini, the Tottenham manager, did not even pay passing tribute to him, because he was upset at losing 21 to Bolton. The club press officer pleaded with him to do his duty and attend the post-match press conference, because he knew how bad it would look, but Santini would not budge. As floral tributes piled up outside White Hart Lane, he sulked in his office. Jacques is a passionate man, and he is upset at losing, the club official insisted. No, he wasn't. He was an arrogant fool who didn't have a clue about Nicholson and Tottenham, did not respect either, and was sacked within a fortnight anyway, unmourned. Increasingly, in the Premier League era, we are losing our connection to history. There will always be players, like Pablo Zabaleta at Manchester City, who develop an affinity for a club despite being an outsider, but the fact that Phil Foden was born into a family of Manchester City supporters will still count for more. Few do a better job for Tottenham than Jan Vertonghen or Christian Eriksen, but it is only Harry Kane who is one of their own. On the final day of the 199,596 season, after Newcastle had missed out on the title to Manchester United under Kevin Keegan, the players walked around St James Park to thank the fans. Most were happy, smiling and waving, pleased with a good campaign even if the outcome was a little disappointing. A lone figure trailed in the wake, devastated. Tottenham Hotspur have a number of brilliant players, but only Harry Kane is one of their own. Steve Watson, born in North Shields, an academy graduate, and at the time of his debut the youngest person ever to play for Newcastle, was the only one who really knew what had been lost, the only one who had dealt all his life with the legends, the stories, the failures, the frustrations. For the same reason, Steven Gerrard's misstep against Chelsea in 2014 was, strictly in the sporting sphere, tragic. No Liverpool player shouldered the weight of history as he did. No one deserved that agony less. It says something that Wilshere, alone among the current squad, sought a connection with Arsenal's champions from 198,889, that the story compelled him to make the short journey to Holloway Odeon in North London with his wife, to share their night. The images from the evening are lovely. Everyone laughing, smiling, sharing jokes, reminiscences, reliving memories of the greatest shootout in the history of English football. Yet there is something else radiating out, something English football has lost a sense of place, of what a club was, and what it should still be. Davis is right. The modern Arsenal could learn something from '89 if they would ever deign to give something so ancient the precious attention. Lukaku owes debt to best pal Jose. Some may think Romelu Lukaku has friends at the FA. His best pal, however, remains Jose Mourinho. When Lukaku scored for fun in his early games at Manchester United, Mourinho insisted his achievements were irrelevant. It was all about team contribution. "There is no pressure for goals from me," he said. Maybe he knew there would be a time, as there is with all strikers, when goals are hard to come by, and he would need to take the focus from Lukaku. That time is now, with one goal, the fourth in a 41 win over Newcastle United, since September. Mourinho's view remains consistent. "He didn't score, I don't care," he maintained after the 10 win over Brighton. Lukaku's petulant tangle with defender Gatan Bong suggests frustration, but Mourinho could not have done more to ease his burden. If Lukaku's place does not survive Zlatan Ibrahimovic's return to fitness, he cannot say he has not been backed. Jose Mourinho has done everything he can to limit the burden on his striker Romelu Lukaku. Now Aussies even win the media battle Monday morning at the Gabba, before a room of strangers. Test debutant Cameron Bancroft gave one of the funniest press conferences any of us had ever seen, and he did it without any assistance. No vetting, no handling, no bland media training. Bancroft may have known what was coming, as one half of the Johnny Bairstow headbutt story, but Cricket Australia splendidly took a back seat and let their man tell it his way. Bancroft has little experience of the spotlight and is hardly known as a raconteur, but they trusted him to be open and honest, and to fill in the gaps left by the ECB's version of events. So we were treated to Bancroft's delighty deadpan description of that evening at the Avenue Bar in Perth. Bairstow and England coach Trevor Bayliss had already spoken and left the room none the wiser, so Bancroft came across magnificently. "He just greeted me with a headbutt," he said, still somewhat bemused. "I was expecting a handshake, so it wasn't really the greeting of choice. He connected with my head with a force that made me think, wow, that's a bit weird." Cameron Bancroft gave a brilliant deadpan press conference about the headbutt incident. "It was just really random. A handshake or even a hug, but a headbutt. He certainly says hello to people differently." He later added, "He didn't knock me over. I've actually got the heaviest head in the Western Australia squad. It's been measured. So I took it quite well. It was a good hit. Play on." So after a test match that confirmed Australia's superiority as a test team, here's something else they're better at talking, because there is no way a British athlete would be trusted to speak as naturally, as charismatically, as that. A terrified press officer would be hovering, waiting to cut him off at the first sign of controversy, or he wouldn't have been allowed to talk at all. It is no coincidence that an Australian Eddie Jones, nicknamed the RFU employee detailed to oversee his press conferences, Jumpy. No British athlete would be trusted to speak as naturally, as charismatically, as Bancroft did. "Look at Jumpy there, he's worried," he would say, before embarking on his next colourful anecdote. Jumpy now works for Northampton Saints. It is a huge failing. Our players across many sports are trained to be scared, to offer nothing but inane platitudes, and then we wonder why they cannot think for themselves in matches. At St George's Park, future football coaches are given media training in which microphones and questions are treated as obstacles to be overcome, rather than opportunities to get your message or personality across. By letting Bancroft be himself, Cricket Australia turned Bairstow and England into figures of mockery. They allowed him to carry the psychological advantage of a 10-wicket victory onto the podium, and simply have more fun with it. Too often in this country we think of athletes as thick. They're not, but they become so when we treat them that way. Rainbow laces send the wrong message. Another Rainbow Laces weekend has passed and we are still no nearer to our first out-gay footballer in the men's game. Greg Clark must be so disappointed. The chairman of the FA rarely misses a chance to talk longingly about the day a gay footballer will welcome him into his closet. "I haven't met one player at professional level who would even agree to meet me in the middle of nowhere for a conversation over a cup of coffee," he said last month. Not one. This implies that Clark knows gay footballers and gay footballers know Clark, but for some reason they cannot communicate. Maybe it's because he keeps inviting them to the middle of nowhere for a cup of coffee. Why doesn't he just go to Starbucks? Equally, maybe gay footballers no more want to be defined by something as irrelevant as the duality, as straight footballers do. Maybe they don't want to be the gay footballer, always on parade whenever the game needs to gay up its act. Another weekend of rainbow laces has come, and we are no nearer to a first-out male football era. A number of years ago, women in football, and particularly football journalism, were quite rare. At one function the host started his speech, "Lady and gentlemen." He probably thought he was being funny, or at the very least factual, but the lady in question wanted the ground to open up. Who wants to spend the evening under a neon, flashing arrow, even a metaphorical one? Oh, look, there she is. Maybe the explanation for Clark's failure to find the gay trailblazer was contained in a column by the former Conservative MP Matthew Parris some months ago. Parris, who is gay, wrote of talking to a friend 20 years his junior when the subject turned to pride marches and the modern concept of the gay community. Parris thought his friend would be part of that, having been a teenager as the gay movement found its voice. "I didn't need a community," his friend said. "I just needed someone to tell me nobody cared." Maybe, instead of secret coffee mornings, that should be the message the FA reinforces. Nobody cares. Just your life. Play your game. Nobody cares. AC Milan have squared off their old pals at UEFA. They've rigged the Champions League coefficients. Now they've sacked the manager. Is there anything more they can do to get back among Europe's elite and all that lovely cash, aside from winning football matches, of course? A lesson from the golden generation. Rio Ferdinand, Frank Lampard and Steven Gerrard, discussing the failure of England's golden generation, was fascinating viewing on BT Sport this week. The trio agreed their intense club rivalries made forming rewarding bonds at international level difficult. They were not enemies, they said, but they were guarded in each other's company. England separated into club cliques, anxious not to reveal information, for fear it might strengthen an opponent. Gerrard said he envied Brazilian players the joy of meeting up with the national team, excited to see friends again, flying in from all over the world. Rio Ferdinand, Frank Lampard and Steven Gerrard L2R discussed England and club rivalries. Maybe Philippe Coutinho and Fernandinho do not feel those conflicts the way, say, Lampard and Ferdinand did. The pair were good friends at West Ham, but as rivals at Chelsea and Manchester United, drifted apart. It could also explain why Gareth Southgate is increasingly willing to place his faith in young players. Of course, there are still club divisions in the England dressing room now, a sizable Tottenham contingent, for instance, another from Manchester United and Manchester City. Yet by picking those who have experienced relative success in age group teams, Southgate will be hoping to bust the cliques. Even Ferdinand, Lampard and Gerrard said they might have felt differently had they had success together from a young age, like players from Spain and Germany. It seems a pity that the foreign managers who held sway over much of the time, Sven-Göran Eriksson and Fabio Capello, knew too little of the English game to see the harm being done, and the one manager who understood, Steve McLaren, lacked the authority to do anything about it.